Hello everyone and welcome to the Action Figure-atorium. My name is Mark Major. I'm a real big toy collector here in Southeast Portland, and I'm giving each and every one of you the Shaka Zulu because that's how I feel. Now today is another Let's Discuss, and we're going to be talking about what happens when indie comic book creators, and there are a lot of them out there these days, especially with the ability to crowdfund, what happens when they decide to take the next step and start making toys based on their IP, based on their characters. We're going to discuss whether or not it's a vanity project or if it's an actual logistical business decision. We're going to see what some other cats have done or are doing. And we're going to kind of determine, and it's just, again, my opinion, but we're going to determine what we think might be a best practice on making toys, i.e. action figures, out of your comic book characters. So, on this journey, come together, strap on the leather, hold on tight. So I think the first thing that we really have to kind of bring to the discussion table in terms of indie comic book creators wanting to make toys is, why are they doing this, right? Is this because they just have this fantasy of seeing so many other great action figure toys that have been made based on comic book characters, that now they have some comic book characters they've created and have published that they now want toys on it? Is this, in essence, a vanity project, right? Is this something that they just want to see done? They don't care if it sells, if it makes money. They just want to see it. Or is this, in fact, maybe a business decision where you have a certain amount of fans and they spend a certain amount of money, and you realize that you could get more money, you could get bigger revenue, bigger income if you had more things to sell. If you've got fans who are willing to pay money for something, right? If you made toys, would this be a great way to then make additional money? And I think it kind of goes both ways, but I'm going to weigh in early and say this. Generally speaking, from what we've seen, it takes a while to grow an audience, okay? You have to be somebody who's been out there doing it for a while. And most of the guys who've been out there doing it for a while are the guys who have the best success with making toys based on their IP. We're going to take a look at some crowdfunded creator action figures, and we're going to see how well they did at making these toys happen. Let's begin, shall we, with the big dog, Todd McFarlane. So Todd McFarlane has got a huge following, right? He's one of the one of the most important cats in the last since the 90s to come into the comic book scene and kind of re-energize it and give it a new energy. Him and, there's some other guys. He's not the only guy. There's people like Rob Liefeld in there, right? But he's really the main cat who energized the comic book scene. And then he went in and, with his own character, Spawn, started to re-energize the action figure and toy scene. Now, one of the things about the early Spawn figures is that they have terrible articulation. They're basically statues that are posed a certain way, and their arms move a little bit, but they look amazing. The detail and the craziness to the early Spawn figures is definitely amazing. And so, it was quite interesting to see that Todd McFarlane, who still making toys, is not really, I would say, necessarily an indie guy in a way, but kind of still is. But he is able to get licenses from some of the pretty big companies out there like DC Comics. And he's done a whole bunch of these 7-inch DC Comic action figures. So I don't know that indie really applies to him per se at this point. But he decided to kickstart, and I don't know why. I've made a video on this guessing that it's really for sort of the PR and the marketing, more so than anything else, but he decided to do some Kickstarters, not one but two, where he would kickstart action figures with the same kind of crazy look and sculpt, but with better articulation of some of the original Spawn guys. And so you see the medieval Spawn, and he raked in $2 million on this campaign. And then there's this one, just the original Spawn, not the original medieval Spawn, $3 million, 447,000 to be exact. That's 3.5 million plus or minus. And I'm sure he ran off a few extra figures that he could sell at conventions or from a special shop, right? So this is quite interesting because pretty sure a guy who has his own toy company doesn't need to crowdfund toys. He could just make them. However, getting a big, huge chunk of money up front and deciding or determining how many to make and to feel out what the market was like if it just cleared $1 million, well, that would be great, right, for crowdfunding. But you know that, well, you know, it's not quite as hot as we thought, but you get to 2 million, 3 million. What if he had gotten to 10 million? That would have been a runaway train, wouldn't it? All right, some other cats out there in the indie sphere who've done some crowdfunding toys. Mike Allred, Madman, one of my favorite comic book artists, one of my favorite comic book characters. If you are unfamiliar with Mike Allred, he actually lives near me in Salem, and you're unfamiliar with Madman, go find his comics, get them and read them. They're amazing. But someone did, sort of on his behalf, with his blessing and, you know, working with him, some Madman action figures that they crowdfunded. Now, here's the thing, is that he's actually had some action figures, and I have some of them, made by other companies, right? He has licensed it to people who've made these, so this isn't a big stretch, but this was something that went up as kind of a weird oddball Kickstarter, and it funded. Let's also look at Zombie Tramp, right? Here's an indie comic. This is someone who has partnered with Executive Replicas and Loose Collector. We're going to get into them in just a little bit. And they hit it out of the park. They were looking for $15,000 for this, essentially this one figure, and they got $169,000, okay? So are these vanity projects, right? Well, clearly they are not. These are probably what I would call business decisions. Mike Allred, and his wasn't a runaway $2 million campaign like Todd McFarlane, but Mike Allred's also not Todd McFarlane. Madman is also not Spawn. Still successful, still means he's got people out there willing to put down money for his product. Quite interesting if you think about it. These guys decided that they would go the crowdfunding way because they weren't sure if this was going to be quite the hit that they thought. But it was, in my opinion, a business decision to do this. Now, I've seen some other crowdfunds from some indie guys out there, and to me they feel a bit vanity. And what does that mean? Well, it means that there isn't really this big following out there, right? They haven't had 10, 20, 30 years to grow an audience. They've only been doing it for a little bit, right? But now they have some sales in comics and they want to see action figures based on their IP. And let's take a look at some of these. Here's one that's actually still active, 30 and 25. Now, I just did a video where I covered this in my marketing analysis. This cat has funded. This guy was only trying to get to about 7,000. He's cleared it, 7,700. It's really just, from what I can tell, this one figure, this kind of skater chick who like goes around killing zombies. But apparently, there's enough people on board to get this thing made. I'm going to say it's still a vanity project because, you know, 7,000 is not that big of a goal and they've just kind of limped over it, but 7 days to go. You know, if they hit 12,000, that's as good as what Mike Allred did, so good on them. Always good on them when they succeed, okay? Let's take a look at some more. All right, so here's one that I also covered. And if you go to my channel, there's a playlist for all these. You can do searches. You can find all these analysis. I'm allowed to post links to them below, and I'll see if I can dig them out. Shield of the Interceptor. This is the indie comic book guy, and this was unsuccessful. He was trying to do not just the guy, right, this dude here, and this is a 3.74 scale. A lot of times the scale will determine whether or not you get a lot of backers or not a lot of backers. Generally speaking, the 6-inch guys do a little better, generally speaking, but they usually need to raise just a tad bit more money, so it kind of evens out. So this guy is a indie comic character, and he was trying to get him made, but he also had some sort of villain type guys. And I actually kind of like the Orc Man and the Residence Eyeball Man and Red Orc Man. I think these guys are actually, if you just were into 3.75 guys, I think these are kind of cool. But $43,000 didn't get close, only got the $7,000. He will relaunch later. But I gotta tell you, I think it's kind of a bit of a vanity project because, I don't know, I hadn't really heard of Shield of the Interceptor. I don't know who this guy is. Hadn't really heard of Zombie Tramp either, but apparently, you know, enough people knew. Let's take a look at another one that happened that was kind of a fail. Riot Press American Ninja X. Okay, so never heard of this guy. This is from Riot Press. This is some sort of you know, Space Ninja, Captain America Ninja. Don't know who this dude is. I had to get to $95,000 for this one figure. Only not even $20,000. Clearly a vanity project. There's no reason for this guy to get made. And there wasn't enough people who showed up. Here's something very, very kind of similar. This is something I covered about a month ago. I'll post a link to this. Cat named Eric July. He is a popular YouTuber who decided out of the blue that he was going to be a comic book writer and publisher. And he started putting out his own comics, and he started hiring people to write comics, ink, pencil, color, edit, all that kind of thing that goes along with what it takes to make a comic book. But he didn't do crowdfunding. Somehow he has just infinite wealth sitting around, which is kind of suspect of a vanity project when you can afford to pay for stuff that nobody really wants. And he did this campaign that's still going, and it's not a pre-order. It's just a countdown. He has them for sale. He sold 507 of his Isom action figure, right? And he's raised this much money, but he's pretending like this is some sort of like a campaign, like a countdown, and we got to raise this money. But there's no campaign here. There's nothing happens when it counts down. There's no finish line to cross. There's no, you know, he's got some milestones that are just, he's going to reveal some more marketing to you. He's going to reveal more characters that he's going to be making. Who would like want to drive that? This is a huge vanity project for a character that has barely existed for a year, that's got like 1, 2, maybe 3 issues out, and already he thinks he's like worthy of a toy. What's really crazy is that he's actually partnered with McFarlane, which to me means he gave the McFarlane company a bunch of money and they said, okay, we'll make a toy for you. So he basically bought clout, is what this is. He hasn't necessarily raised the money, he's just spent the money, okay? This is a vanity project as well, and you see this over and over again. Comic book creators want toys, but there's no real business model behind it. It's just vanity projects, okay? Let's look at some other things that, in my opinion, are kind of a vanity project, but they did well. There is, what is this? So, check this out. This is a guy, he started off as an indie guy in the 90s, and then he went on to work for both Marvel and DC, did real well at DC, created some characters, drew a lot of famous comic books in the Green Lantern series. This is Ethan Van Sciver, and when he left about 2015-16 from DC Comics, he brought out his old 90s character that he created, Cyberfrog, started doing indie comics and crowdfunding again, right? And then he decided that he was going to make his own action figures, but he's been real adamant saying that he wants to do it all himself. He wants to hire the designers, he wants to hire the guys to work on it, to create the packaging, and that he would have someone that he pays to work with the factories because he wants to get it all physically in hand and have it at his warehouse and have control over it. To me, I feel like this is kind of a vanity project, but it's also in this case swung over to where this was a pretty good business decision because look at this. He raised $619,000 on these Cyberfrog figures. Now, I ended up buying one for $20 discount on Big Bad Toy Stores, a particular variant, the bloody variant that nobody wanted. I did a video on the channel where I did a repaint of the figure. Here it is. So I bought one of his Cyberfrogs. Why not? And I didn't like the bloody variant. I thought it was stupid, but why not customize and repaint and repurpose? And now this thing is it's a hunter. This dog hunts. So to me, this is a case of a vanity project, and I think it was a vanity project, right? Because I'm going to show you there's some other options. But it swung over to where it ended up being a very smart business decision where he's now totally in control of his product. And he gets to say as to like when it comes out and how many sells and where it goes and all this stuff. Control really means a lot in this case. Okay, now there is also something I want to show you guys. Here's another campaign that is current. 30 days to go. They haven't hit their total. It's a character named Blaine, and I made the joke that character is actually named Bland, because to me it just looks like a dude, but I never read the comic, and I could be coming off sounding like a dick to the guy, when in fact he's probably a good guy, and his character is probably pretty kick-ass, but he's trying to raise $15,000 to get this guy made, also being done in connection with Loose Collector. Again, we're going to get to Loose Collector next, okay? And he's trying to make this Blaine action figure, and for a 3.75 guy, he, you know, like, even if you don't like the character, you might be a cool body to get and repaint into something, you know, think of, you know, be inspired, people. So this might be something you're into, is this Blaine guy, but to me, if you're only trying to get the $15,000 and you've only gotten $7,626, I feel as if this is a bit of a vanity project and not necessarily a business decision. All right, so what do I think most indie comic book creators who have a big following, what do I think they should do? Should they crowdfund or should they license? And I feel, for the most part, if you were to ask me, I would tell these guys, without knowing them personally, without knowing their character, without knowing their following, I would tell them license. I would say find somebody who's an existing toy company, who's making product, license your character to them, let them handle it. You get a piece of the cake, piece of the pie, you promote it. The more your character is, people love it, the more you'll sell, then they'll, you know. And in this case, it's, again, we've mentioned a couple times, it's Loose Collector Executive Replicas. We're going to go to Big Bad Toy Store, and you can see a bunch of characters here that they make for indie comic book creators that are basically a license. They have a Vampirella, right? They have a Lady Death. If you're unfamiliar with Brian Paluto and his Lady Death, huge character in the 90s and continues with his own brand, Coffin Comics, continues to kick ass. He's one of the major pillars of the indie comic book scene. You should definitely know who this guy is. You should definitely know who Lady Death is, right? Purgatory is another one of his characters in the Lady Death series. You got a bunch of characters. People love these characters. Now, he has licensed this character out several times before. There is actually quite a bit of Lady Death product out there, from figurines, other existing action figures, lunch boxes, t-shirts. This guy does it as a business, but he doesn't do it himself. He's a licensed guy, and I think that's smart, all right? Lemurta is another one of his characters, licensed out. And we see more figures here that are licensed out from different indie creators. There's a Chaotica, there's a Hell Witch. Of course, there is a Critter, who I don't really know who she is, but kind of know. Then we got Billy Tucci. This is a guy who has licensed his character, She, out several times. He licensed it out to Dark Horse Comics, who did a She action figure. I got one. He licensed it out to Blue Box Toys, who did a 1/6 version. I got that. He licensed it out to Bison, who does this crazy $300-400 version, which I don't have. Maybe one day. That's just one of those seamless Bison dolls in kind of a cool outfit. But he's a licensed guy. What did he do? He licensed it to Executive Replicas, and look at this. It's now on the page with all these other licensed out figures. And to me, I think this is the way to go. If you're an indie comic book creator and you're looking to get toys made, go about a license. That's what the guy does. Zombie Tramp did. He did a license to Loose Collector, who then they decided to do a Kickstarter, probably because they're like a little squeamish, like, is anyone going to buy it? Turns out, hit it out of the park. Then Blaine went to them, and they said, we don't know. And they did a Kickstarter, and it's currently going. Not really hitting it out of the park, but might clear it enough, right? And so you can see that licensing these characters out to different people might be the way to go. Now, we're not done, people. We got to take a look at this, okay? I covered this on the channel. Longbox Heroes. What is this? What is this? Well, this is from Fresh Monkey Fiction and Toy Otter Toys. Those are two names you've probably seen around. Fresh Monkey Fiction, I believe, is the people behind, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, I think they do Monster Force is one of their lines. They really actually have become sort of a subsidiary of Big Bad Toy Store, more or less. Big Bad Toy Store, I think, provides the funding for these guys to do their thing because they seem to keep having sales. And so rather than go to, like, you know, Executive Replicas, Loose Collector, here's a whole bunch of different comic book characters from indie creators, right? We get Grendel, we get the Tick, we get the Rocketeer, right? Betty from the Rocketeer, Matt Wagner's Mage, character Kevin Matchstick. There's the Grendel, if you're not familiar with them. Savage Dragon. These are all indie guys who have a big following, but they didn't do their own individual Kickstarter. They went with this company, but even then, they weren't sure that it was going to go. So they took a whole bunch of these indie guys and they made a Kickstarter based on this because they knew once they had the buck, they could reuse it and crank out. It's just more efficient if you're going to make 12 guys, right? And just make a whole bunch of characters off of a couple different body types, a female and a male. Now, unfortunately, these guys canceled this Kickstarter, right? Now, I think they could have easily gone into production because they did a previous version of Longbox Heroes where they did not crowdfund. Maybe they lost money on it, don't know. But in this case, they decided to crowdfund and they decided to cancel it. Now, they claim that the reason why they canceled it was when the tariff started at the beginning of the year and everyone was crying that the price of action figures was going to go up 6,000% or something like that, and they said, we're out. The reality of the matter is I think the crowdfund wasn't doing that well. It wasn't like, if it had funded in a day or two and they knew it was going to, you could, if you believe in the product and the funding is there, you can make anything happen. You can push it through. But they used the tariff to say, we're out, we're done with this. And I think it was just a cover. People will debate me on it. That's fair. You're allowed to debate me. But this is kind of what I'm talking about, where if you're an indie creator, you can go to Fresh Monkey Fiction or Executive Replica, Loose Collector, and you can say, hey, I've got this guy, I do a comic, here's how many issues are out, here's how many backers I have, here's how many I've sold, here's the response I get when I go to comic conventions. Do you want to license this and make a toy off of my IP? And they'll say, yes, either we'll just go right into production with it like they did with Lady Death, home run, She, home run, Vampirella, home run, right? Or they might say, yeah, we'll kickstart it and if it funds, then you're in and here's the deal. This is what I think, though, in my opinion, is the I think that's the best practice. If you're an indie comic book creator, I don't think you should do a crowdfund unless you have really, really successful crowdfunds with your comic books where you're pulling in six figures, easily six figures, and look like you might even hit the threshold of seven figures. Yeah, then you could do a crowdfund for your toy, but I think most cats out there, it's not a business thing, it's kind of a vanity project. Doesn't mean that it's not worth doing, right? And if you throw up a Kickstarter and it doesn't fund, big deal. Not that it's not worth doing, but you should really try and let toy guys take care of the toy thing. You give up control, but the headache, the worry, and the fact that you get the thing made and it's in your hand, and ultimately that's what a lot of these cats want in the first place, I think that that's the best practice. License, 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 people. That's what I want you to take away from this. When in doubt, find another cat doing it, license it, see how it goes, take it from there. So, thanks to everybody who made it this far into the video. Very appreciate it. Could you like and subscribe? That's free. It doesn't cost anything. Or does it? No, it doesn't. It's free. Still, though, if you don't want to do that or you do want to do that, that's on you. But together, people, all of us, let's stay charged.